Hey everyone, today is, in my opinion, a wonderful day to be a Star Wars fan. We've got The Mandalorian going nice and strong, and we've had, as of just today, the day that this video is being recorded, a bunch of additional upcoming projects, film projects, series projects, animations and such that have been either announced or confirmed. And a lot of them sound really good to me, with their subject matter as well as who is leading them. That said, we've also got stuff that is on its way out, such as the sequel trilogy. It seems like nobody's talking about the sequel trilogy anymore. Companies aren't putting any money into the sequel trilogy. Lego will probably do some sequel trilogy stuff in the future, but not much. And that is why I'm continuing my retrospective of Lego's coverage of the Star Wars sequel trilogy. Last time I talked about my favorite builds from the entire series of across 5 years of products. And now I've gotten to my least favorite builds, and probably some of the stuff on this table will be obvious to you if you've watched my reviews of any of this stuff, or even if you haven't. A lot of it will, well, at least some of it will strike you as a duh, obviously. But hopefully some of it will also maybe raise an eyebrow, maybe two, maybe cause you to scratch your head a little bit. I'm going to start with this one that might be very unexpected. This crate ski speeder thing here. The reason that I've put this onto this table amongst my least favorite builds from the sequel trilogy has to do with not just this, but also this. And specifically, so these came together, right? And the whole defense of crate and that very concept. Now, hindsight is 2020. I'm not going to go into this too much because I've talked about it plenty before and everybody should understand it. Lego starts working on their Star Wars in particular set designs very, very early based on concept art, and they don't have access to, for new material, they don't have access to the plots. So they would not have known how little this would be worth, like what little value it would have to the entire series. However, even with that, even giving them that, this is too big. It's way, way too big for its value. They easily could have used this many parts or this mass of plastic to create two smaller ones. That would have been just fine. Or if they really felt that including just one was going to be right because it looked from the concept art like they were going to have one major character who was going to be piloting one of these, and that was going to be the important thing. Okay, that's forgivable, but as a toy, this has barely more value than this little microfighter version of it. This shoots two things and has a little ski that comes down. This one doesn't automatically angle its ski down, but it automatically angles it up as you push it down towards the ground. This one is automatic, and it's got two things that it'll shoot. Holds one figure. Okay, that's a big difference in size and cost and value, and yet not really that big of a difference in value. This has a lot more display value, but as a toy, these are really, really close, and that sucks. And I'm not happy with that at all, especially given that we could have gotten a lot more of crate had this been a single speeder set, as it is, with a much smaller speeder. And a lot more of crate, and a lot more of the base. That would have been, in my opinion, more interesting, cooler, smarter, better, yeah, all that good stuff. So that is why I have put these two things, which go together, onto this table here. Agree or not? Let's move on to the Thai Dorito over here, the Dorito Fighter. So I am a little bit biased against this in universe. I didn't like the way that they brought in the Final Order and the Sith troopers and all that. They were just I don't know, just didn't feel right to me. But I can move past that. Okay, I can abstract those feelings from my feelings about this model and toy here. And doing that, I can definitely say I like how Lego implemented the shape there. I like how they got the red lines in there. I like the introduction of the new wedge plate pieces to get these nice edges, these nice points here, inside and out, the black and the red. Like, that's all nice. However, turning towards the inside, I mean, this thing is kind of weak. It's difficult to use, it barely works, but it works well enough. Okay, not going to dock it on that, but the fuselage is not great to me. It's just not great. It's a little bit blocky, a little bit plain, and like it's looking like it was trying to get things right here, but then you go to the inside and they didn't really care that much, I guess. Worst thing about it was the price, though. $80 for this. Feels like a lot less stuff to me than even the next $80 TIE Fighter. The mass of it, like when you put it in your hand, you feel like, oh man, very, very nose heavy. Not quite as good to swish as a regular TIE Fighter. For that reason, it just doesn't quite feel right in the hand. So there's mass, there's amount of plastic here, but amount of stuff as a toy or as a display model, not so much to me. It's just not on the level that it needed to be. This, to me, either needed to be much nicer, especially in the center section, like much nicer, or it needed to be much cheaper. It was neither, therefore it ends up on this table for me. I just have absolute minimal good feelings about this thing. No matter how objectively I try to look at it, there are some things that, as I see, are just not good about it. Let's move on to something else that's fairly obvious. Oh, how about a walker? So why did I put this here? Now, some folks will probably say, but it's a big thing, therefore it's awesome. But is it really, though? So when this came out, the first order heavy, was it heavy walker or heavy transport walker? The ATM-6 Gorilla Walker. When this came out, it was by far the most expensive walker of this type that LEGO had made. The previous AT-AT was $110 US. This was $150 US, if I'm recalling correctly. An increase of almost 40% for something that ended up being the same size overall as that last walker from just a few years before, 3 years before. This was 2017. Last Imperial AT-AT was 2014, and it was pretty good. So that's a lot of premium to put on the fact that this was from a new movie. A lot of premium cost to throw at us. Did it have more pieces? Well, I mean, yeah, it's more complex, but was that complexity valuable? Did it really make things better for us? Did it make this a better toy? So you can open these things up and we don't see anything usable there. Okay, so we can open this up. Aha! You've got two seats. One seat here, one seat on the other side. And got the little space in between there. All right. Yeah, you could, I mean, they've got a little container in the door there. You could throw something in the center of this, but for the most part, you open this up and you just see like structure and hollow space, and this is kind of awkward here. It just doesn't feel complete. It doesn't feel that valuable, that useful as something that in universe towered over the Empire era walkers, right? This was a truly massive thing. If they had made this much bigger, I would have been fine with the price, but they didn't. If they had made it much more useful in the inside, like where you could put a bunch of troops in there, that would have been fine, but they didn't. You can put two people in there. Cool. Little spring-loaded shooters have their tails showing down here. A little awkward. Again, for paying this much now. That said, we then would end up getting another walker, another Imperial walker, right, just recently. And that costs even more than this. Again, it was about the same size, but at least that new one is a much better design. It's the best, in my opinion, best design of four-legged Mega Walker that they've done. So at least there is some way to make the argument, to have the discussion about it being worth the extra price. But with this one, no. Way more expensive and not even useful, not even good as a toy. It didn't even look that impressive, not any bigger. That's why I've decided to put it here, because it's another one of those cases where there aren't a lot of redeeming qualities to this, in my opinion. If a kid got this for free and loved it, great. Appreciated its size, never saw the Imperial ones before, great. I just know that Lego could do so much better. They've proven they could do so much better, and they very much did not here. Of course, I don't blame the designer for the price, but I do want to talk about another walker, and that's this one. And with this one, I definitely have to feel a little empathy for the designer, because this is based off a concept that just didn't make it into the movie, at least not in this form. Yeah, that was rough, and I fear that the designer took flack that was not necessarily deserved. I may have even thrown some flack at the designer that was not necessarily deserved. I know I tried not to, but ultimately, this is just a thing that wasn't in the movie. They ended up using this concept, this multi-leg concept for one of the tugs to pull in the giant super laser to use in the attack on Crate, but otherwise. Okay, so moving past that, right? Moving past the fact that it wasn't used, let's just look at this. Let's just look at it as what it is, okay? It's got all these legs and things, and it has a mechanism to make those legs move. It's kind of sticky, but there we go. So the legs just move a pair at a time, alternating. Doesn't even really look that good. And you see all the mechanism from the side. You see the super obvious wheels there from the side. So there's no suspension of disbelief with this. It's just right there in your face. Tires and cams that just knock these things up into the air. Like, if this had a really nice little pattern to it, that could have been really cool. It would have helped to redeem this. You've got no ability to angle the head. You've got no ability to turn the head. Rotating the whole thing is not particularly fun. Like, you just essentially pick it up and just turn it. So as a toy, it's not that fun, in my opinion. You can change the angles of the spring-loaded shooters. I don't have bolts in there right now. So that was something you could do. You could also change the angles of these. That's fine. And as for accommodation for folks inside, that was perfectly fine. 2 seats in there and a little console. That's perfectly fine. For this size, no problems there. But all this just didn't work out, in my opinion. And then compound that, the fact that this wasn't even in the movie. Yeah, it's pretty forgettable. And thus, it deserves to be on this table. One more thing that deserves to be on this table, in my opinion, is this. This looks really good. The Knights of Ren Transport ship. This looks really good to me. It looks better than I expected it to, in pictures and in person. Then I did this. This opens up right here. This opens up right here. You can have a person standing there. You can have a person standing there. And that's it. So you've got this collection of 6 minifigures. And I'll get to the minifigures in a separate video, just talking about minifigures. You have this collection of 6 minifigures. You had to buy, was it 5 or 6 sets to get those 6 really cool looking, really interesting looking characters, you know? Maybe they weren't used all that well in the movie after all, but they're still cool looking. It's kind of like original Boba Fett, right? Original Boba Fett was not used well in the original trilogy, but he was a really cool dude, and we wanted to like him more and, you know, expand the lore with that. We could have done that with the Knights of Ren, but what Lego has given us as a literal vehicle for that expansion of lore and the expansion of the fun there is something that will hold 2 of the 6 characters that you collected, spending hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars to get all 6. This will hold 2 of them, and it's empty underneath. It's just a hollow, it's a 3-dimensional facade. It's like a flat surface that was just printed and then draped over a frame. Much distaste. It just feels so wrong to me. Now, if this had been a display set, maybe even scaled a little bit smaller, that was just designed to be something that you just put on a desk, you know, in the 18 plus range as an adult Lego fan specific thing, the overall look of it is pretty good. And they didn't need to have a super detailed interior if they were going to put it at a small enough scale to where it was intended to be just a desk model. But with the accommodations for just 2 figures that don't even go all the way inside, there is no interior to this whatsoever. And what about the other 4? Come on! Come on, it's a Knights of Ren Transport that cannot transport the Knights of Ren. Even if there were some fan hopeful suggestions, some Lego forgivers wanted this to be another case of misunderstanding where Lego just didn't know. Maybe this is actually true and I'm just being too cynical, but maybe the designer thought this was going to be a hover tank. Makes more sense, but it's still a Knights of Ren transport that can't transport the Knights of Ren. So it belongs on this table. And finally, I have no further words. Those are my least favorite builds of the sequel trilogy. Thank you for watching. If you haven't seen my favorites, you can check that out. I've also got some other entries in this series that I enjoyed doing more than this. And next, I'm going to look at the minifigures. There's definitely some cool stuff that was done in the minifigures, regardless of what was done with the figures, or excuse me, the characters that they represent in the series itself. So stay tuned for that. Thank you for watching, and I will talk to you again soon.